Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, April 17th, 2020. The coronavirus delays, small business tax compliance burdens, and crony capitalism. Now, we all know that the filing deadline for individual tax returns has been extended from April 15th to July 15th for this year. However, this is not a reduction of the tax compliance burden. It's only a delay in having to comply with a burden created by the complexity of the federal income tax code. It's also a very clear example of crony capitalism at its worst. SCORE is a 501c3 nonprofit organization and a resource partner of the U.S. Small Business Administration. According to its website, SCORE's volunteers assisted in creating almost 20,000 new businesses in 2019. Now, SCORE surveyed small businesses regarding the effect tax compliance has on them, and in an article entitled Tax Reform's Impact on Small Business, the following data from that survey was reported. 34% of the businesses surveyed take over 40 hours a year preparing federal tax information. 18% take between 21 and 40 hours preparing federal tax information. 15% spend more than $10,000 in hard costs complying with the tax code. 16% spend between $5,000 and $10,000 in hard costs. And 35% said that federal tax policies will have a negative effect on their business in 2020. Now, the present income tax code presents a real and totally unnecessary burden for small businesses and for the rest of us as well. So why is it still not only tolerated, but endorsed by the ruling class? Well, the answer is crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is when government and big business work together to get special benefits that are not available to anyone else. Now, this can happen at the local level, for example, when large contributors get zoning approvals that are denied to others. And it also happens at the national level, and that explains why there are so many very well-paid lobbyists in the Washington, D.C. area. However, the basic truth of crony capitalism is that the wealthy and the large companies benefit from it, and the rest of us pay for it. Will there still be crony capitalism under the FAIRtax? Well, unfortunately, probably so. The income payroll tax system is only one form of crony capitalism, but it's a quite valuable one. Now, the reason that it's so valuable is that most of the crony capitalism that takes place is hidden from all but a few of us. It's hidden in plain sight in provisions of the federal income tax code, but like the rest of the tax code, it is very hard for all but a very select few to comprehend it. Now, you'll hear occasional outcries in the press about special privileges that some businesses get through crony capitalism, but for the most part of it, no one even realizes it's going on. So, how's it done? Tax professionals obviously get paid for helping their clients comply with the income payroll tax law. However, some of their largest fees are earned by helping their clients pay less federal taxes than most other companies pay. These professionals work for large companies and wealthy people because they're the only ones that can afford the hefty fees. Now, there's a very remunerative game being played between the writers of the income tax code and these tax professionals. The writers of the law are generally the staff of the House Ways and Means Committee and the Senate Finance Committee. Now, another fact, often not revealed, is that often many of the provisions of the income tax code are suggested or even actually drafted by these same tax professionals who will then use these new provisions to assist their clients. Once the new provisions become law, then the tax professionals find a way to ensure that their clients pay less federal income tax than other similarly situated companies who don't pay for their expensive advice. Now, if the tax professionals are successful, then the IRS demands that the law be changed to prevent those companies and others like them from getting that tax advantage. So the game starts all over again, and the income tax code becomes even more complex. Another little-known fact is that many of the staff members writing the new, even more complex laws will soon be employed by the very tax professionals they were seeking to stop from exploiting the income tax code. Now, who better to find a way to take advantage of new legal provisions than the people who wrote them? Now, the more difficult the law is to understand, the more the wealthy and large businesses are willing to pay for one of the few people who supposedly can understand it. Now, this is why a relatively small group of people are so interested in making the federal income tax code more and more complicated. So just why do big businesses tolerate such complex laws? Well, it's because they can afford to pay for the professional help needed to navigate them. They can save a lot in federal income taxes that other companies will have to pay. They know that smaller companies can't afford the same professional help, and they believe that they'll be receiving a benefit not available to others. In conclusion, these increasingly complex laws apply to all businesses, large and small, and that makes it more difficult for all but the wealthiest to comply. The crony capitalists oppose the FAIRtax because the one thing they fear the most is transparency. Under the FAIRtax, all American businesses and individuals too, regardless of size or wealth, will be subject to the same rules. If the FAIRtax were law, crony capitalists and their congressional allies would have to appropriate money in the open. They could no longer hide it in the corrupt and incomprehensible income tax code. The FAIRtax eliminates the lucrative shakedown being run on all of us by the people who truly believe in the crony capitalism definition of the golden rule. Those who've got the gold get even more gold from others that have less, and then they share it with the politicians and bureaucrats who make it all happen. Now, if you're ready to take back control of the government from a small group of corrupt people and regain the ability for all to prosper, go to FAIRtax.org and join us. Then contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the FAIRtax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.